just someone they could drop their kids on. It was 1 week before Christmas. I was sitting in my living room holding a warm cup of tea, thinking about the holidays. The house was quiet, almost peaceful. Then I heard my daughter talking in the kitchen. She was laughing with someone on the phone. And then, just like a punch to the chest, I heard her say, "Let's leave all 6 kids with Mom. We deserve a resort trip this year." I froze. The cup almost slipped from my hand. For a moment, I didn't even breathe. After everything I had done, after raising 3 kids on my own, after giving them every Christmas memory they ever had, this was how they thought of me? Not as their mother, not as someone who also gets tired. Without even asking. Right there, in that quiet room with the ticking clock and cold December air, I felt something break inside me. I sat there for a minute, kinda stunned, letting her words sink in. And then, just like that, old memories started hitting me one after. I thought about all those Christmases I busted my tail for. Baking pies from scratch, staying up half the night wrapping gifts, running around town picking up last-minute stuff because one of the kids forgot. Every single year, I made sure the holiday felt magical, even when I was running on fumes. And those nights with crying babies? Lord, I remember pacing the hallway at 3 a.m., holding a feverish little one, whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart. Grandma's got you." I never complained, not once. I just kept going, because that's what moms do. That's what I did. But listening to my daughter that day, it stung. All that love, all those years of showing up, and somehow I'd turned into the default babysitter. Not their mom. Not someone who deserved a break. Just the person they could drop their kids on without a second thought. And I'll be honest, that realization hit hard, really hard. I leaned back in my chair and whispered, "Man, is this really what all those years?" That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat in my old rocking chair, the same one I used when my babies were still in diapers. The house was quiet, but my mind sure wasn't. Across the room, I saw the Christmas gifts I'd bought, all lined up neatly on the couch. 6 little piles, 6 little reminders of how fast my money disappeared and how fast my love was taken for granted. I'd spent over $1,200 this year. Didn't even blink. Didn't even buy myself a darn thing. And suddenly I felt this ache in my chest. Not the sharp "I'm mad" kind. No, this was the slow, heavy kind. The kind that comes from years of being overlooked. I stared at those gifts and thought, what am I doing? Why am I the only one pouring myself out while everybody else just takes? The room felt colder. The lights seemed dimmer. And for the first time in a long time, I felt done. Not angry, not spiteful, just tired. Bone tired. I realized in that moment that my love had become background noise, something they heard but never really listened to. And sitting there, in that quiet living room with Christmas lights blinking behind me, I told myself the truth I'd avoided for years. I can't keep living like this. I sat there for a long time, just rocking back and forth, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. And then, I did something I hadn't done in years. I reached for my phone, not to text my kids, not to babysit, not to fix anyone's problem, but to call someone who actually saw me. My best friend, Paula. She's been my ride or die since high school. The kind of woman who tells you the truth, even when it stings. When she answered, she said, "Hey girl, what's up? You sound rough." I didn't even try to hide it. "Paula, I can't do this Christmas. I just can't." There was a pause, one of those quiet moments where you know someone's really listening. "What happened?" she asked softly. took a shaky breath. They're planning to leave all 6 kids with me while they go on vacation. They didn't even ask. They just assumed. Paula didn't gasp. She didn't overreact. She just let out this slow breath and said, "Girl, you deserve better. You've been showing up for everybody but yourself. It's time you pack a bag and go somewhere, anywhere, just for you." Her voice was steady, warm, almost like a hug through the phone. And for the first time in a long time, I felt understood, really understood. Paula didn't guilt trip me, didn't say, "But they're your kids," didn't say, "It's Christmas." She just said, "Go, honey, it's your turn to be seen." And right then, I knew she was right. Something inside me shifted, quiet but firm. I wasn't running away. I was finally walking toward myself. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. Not because someone needed me, not because a baby was crying, but because something inside me finally said, "Enough." I sat up in bed and looked around my room. Same old dresser, same old photos, same old life I kept putting myself last in. And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel guilty thinking about me. I grabbed an old suitcase from the closet. It had dust on it. Kinda sad, honestly. I couldn't even remember the last time I packed it for myself and not for one of the kids. I didn't pack fancy stuff. Just the basics. A couple of comfy outfits, my worn-out sandals, my sun hat that still had a Target tag on it because I never actually used it. I even tossed in a book I'd been meaning to read for years. And you know what? It felt weird, but good. Like I was finally choosing myself after a lifetime of saying, "Sure, no problem, I got it." The snow outside was piling up, wind rattling the windows, but I didn't care. I felt warm for the first time in a long time. Not from a blanket, from the idea that I was going somewhere, just for me. No gifts, no stockings, no running around doing everyone else's Christmas. Just me, my tiny suitcase, and a quiet promise. This year, I'm not the backup plan. I'm not the babysitter. I'm a woman who deserves a damn break. And with that, I zipped up the suitcase and set it by the door, feeling lighter than I had in years. I stood there in that hallway, my hand pressed against the old wallpaper, like I needed it to hold me up. Their voices kept drifting up, each word slicing deeper than the last. Nathan chuckled and said, "Mom won't say no. She never does. She'll just smile and take the kids. She always does." Melissa added, "Exactly. She lives for this stuff. It'll keep her busy while we finally get a break." Busy. Like I was some babysitting machine that didn't get tired or lonely or human. I felt something sting behind my eyes, but I blinked it away. I wasn't going to stand there crying like some helpless old lady. But God, it hurt. I gave up holidays, vacations, sleep, all those years raising my own kids alone. I stood by them through their worst breakups, job losses, fevers at 3 a.m., bills they couldn't pay. I carried them, sometimes literally, when life knocked them flat. And somewhere along the way, they just stopped seeing me. Not as their mom, not as a woman with a heart. Just free childcare with a rocking chair and a smile. And hearing them call it no big deal made my whole chest ache. I whispered to myself, they forgot I had feelings too. And for the first time in a long time, I wondered if maybe I'd let them. I didn't confront them. I didn't step downstairs and demand answers. I just slowly turned around and walked back to my room, feeling like a ghost drifting through a house I'd built with my own 2 hands. My steps were quiet, but inside my chest, everything felt loud. My heartbeat, my breathing, the damn ache I was trying to swallow. I shut my bedroom door gently, like even the door had more respect for me than my own kids did. I sat back down in my rocking chair, the one place in the world that still felt like mine. The knitting needles lay in my lap, but my hands wouldn't move. They were shaking too much. I stared at the tiny red stocking I had just made, so small it could fit in my palm. I imagined my little granddaughter's smile when she'd see it. That was why I did everything. Not for Nathan, not for Melissa, but for those babies who still loved without conditions. But tonight, even their smiles couldn't soften the punch I'd taken. My mind kept replaying Nathan's words. She won't say no. She always does what we want. She lives for this stuff. Like I didn't have my own dreams anymore. Like I didn't have a life outside of their needs. I leaned my head back, rocking slowly, whispering into the dim room, "Lord, when did I become invisible in my own family?" And in that quiet moment, something inside me shifted. Not broken, not yet, but cracked just enough to let the truth seep in. I must have rocked in that chair for a good hour, just trying to calm the storm inside me. Then, ding, my phone lit up on the nightstand. For a second, I hoped it was one of my grandbabies sending me a goofy selfie. But no, it was Nathan. The screen showed just one line, short and cold. "Mom, we're dropping the kids off around 6 a.m. Be ready." No, please. No, thank you. No, is that okay? Just an order. Like I was their built-in babysitter, not their mother. I swear, the room felt smaller. My throat tightened, like someone had reached in and squeezed it. I reread the text 3 times, hoping I was mistaken. But nope. Same darn words every time. I typed out a reply. "What do you mean by be ready?" But then I deleted it, because I already knew. They weren't asking me. They were telling me. And that hurt worse than the words I overheard downstairs. I set the phone down, but my hands were trembling again. My heart felt like it had slipped right down to my stomach, heavy and cold. This wasn't the family I raised. The family that used to beg me to sit with them, laugh with them, celebrate with them. Somewhere along the road, I had gone from mom to the help. And as the night pressed on, one truth kept circling in my mind, cruel but clear. If I don't draw a line now, they're gonna walk all over me until there's nothing left of me. But what I didn't know yet was that the next morning would flip my whole world upside down even more. I barely slept. I don't even think you could call it sleep. More like closing my eyes and drowning in my own, because that's what moms do, even when their hearts are hurting. I brushed my hair, washed my face, put on a clean sweater. Not because anyone cared, but because I cared. Because my grandbabies deserved to see me looking like the grandma they loved, not the one who cried half the night. At exactly 5:58 a.m., I heard gravel crunching outside. My stomach twisted. 2 minutes early. Of course they were. I peeked through the curtain. Nathan's SUV was loaded like they were moving cross-country. Suitcases piled high. Kids half asleep in the back. Melissa tapping on her phone like she was checking brunch reservations. My heart dropped. They were really doing this, leaving me with all the responsibility while they went off to sip cocktails and take selfies in some fancy resort. The knock came, sharp, rushed, no warmth. Nathan didn't even wait for me to open the door fully before he started unloading bags. "Mom, we're kinda in a hurry. The flight's early," he said, like I was some hotel clerk slowing him down. I wanted to say, "Son, Can you at least look at me?" But the words died in my throat. Then the kids rushed in. Messy hair, sleepy eyes, tiny arms reaching for me. "Grandma!" They wrapped around my legs like little vines, warm and soft and unbelievably sweet. And right then, right in that messy, emotional hug, I realized something. My grandbabies were the only ones who still saw me, really saw me. Not as a chore, not as a burden, but as love. And yet, as I looked up at Nathan and Melissa walking back to the car without even a goodbye hug, a cold truth hit me hard. Love shouldn't feel this one-sided. And that was the moment something inside me quietly snapped. Not in anger, but in resolve. Because this wasn't going to happen again. Not on my watch. That night, after the kids were finally tucked into bed, I sat at my little desk by the window. The moonlight spilled across the pages of my notebook, and for the first time in years, I wrote. I wrote all the things I never said aloud, all the feelings I shoved down to keep the peace, all the hurt I carried silently while everyone else got their way. "I am tired," I scribbled. "I am human. I am more than a caretaker. I deserve joy. I deserve peace." Page after page, the words spilled out like a dam finally breaking. I wrote about the nights I held sick children, about the birthdays I stayed up wrapping gifts, about the times I put their needs above my own, and about how invisible it made me feel. I didn't worry about neat handwriting or proper sentences. I didn't care if anyone ever read. This was for me. And as I wrote, I felt something shift inside. Every word was like a little weight lifting off my chest. Every sentence was a chain I didn't even know I was wearing, snapping. I wrote until my hand ached and the room grew cold. And by the time I finally closed the notebook, I felt lighter, freer. Like I had taken the first step toward claiming a life that wasn't just about everyone else. For the first time in decades, I realized I could care for others and still care for myself. And that night, under the soft glow of the lamp, I promised myself, this Christmas, it was finally going to be about me. Christmas Eve came, and the house was quiet. Not because anyone was home. Oh no! Nathan and Melissa were long gone, probably sipping drinks and snapping selfies at their resort. I, on the other hand, was sitting on the balcony, watching the ocean turn this soft, fiery pink as the sun set. The waves crashed gently, almost like they were cheering me on, whispering, "You did good. You're doing good." I had no cookies to bake, no frantic shopping to finish, no schedules to juggle, just me. And you know what? It felt amazing. For the first time in years, I laughed, really laughed. Not that polite, hold it in kind of laugh that mothers do when they're tired and stressed. This was deep belly laughing freedom. The kind that makes your chest ache a little because it's been too long. I closed my eyes and let the wind wrap around me, smelled the salty air, and thought about all the times I'd spent running myself ragged for everyone else. And now none of that mattered. I didn't need approval. I didn't need thanks. I just needed this moment. As the sky darkened and the first stars blinked awake, I whispered quietly to myself, "This is my Christmas, mine, and it feels perfect." For the first time in decades, I wasn't just surviving the holidays, I was living them for me. As I sat there watching the waves, memories started creeping in, flashes of Christmases long gone. I remembered the chaos, wrapping paper flying across the room, toddlers screaming because Santa forgot one toy, knees aching from hours spent cooking, and the constant hum of exhaustion that never left my body. Back then, I thought that was love. That's what being a mom meant. Sacrificing everything for everyone else, even when it broke you inside. But tonight, none of that was here. No chaos, no screaming, no frantic phone calls asking me to fix something, no guilt trips, no last-minute emergencies. For the first time in years, I felt invisible in the way that actually felt good. Invisible and free. I realized something heavy but true. I had spent decades letting myself get lost in the noise of other people's lives. Every holiday, every birthday, every just one more thing had chipped away at me. But tonight, under the soft hum of the ocean and the quiet stars above, I could hear my own heartbeat again. I wasn't needed. I wasn't demanded. I was just me. And that realization hit deeper than I expected. Because, for the first time, being invisible didn't feel lonely. It felt like I finally mattered to myself. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of seagulls and the gentle slap of waves on the shore. For the first time in years, I didn't have a schedule. I didn't have errands. I didn't have anyone depending on me. And I realized something I'd forgotten long ago. I had a life. A me outside of being everyone else's caretaker. I pulled on my sneakers and walked along the beach, letting the sand squish between my toes. I breathed in deep, feeling the salt in the air fill my lungs, and I laughed quietly to myself. It was weird, feeling this light. Like a weight I didn't even know I was carrying had finally lifted. I pulled out a notebook and started sketching. Simple shapes at first, waves, sand, the horizon. Then colors, then ideas I hadn't had time to think about in decades. I painted, I wrote. I even sang a little under my breath. Terribly, but who cared? It was for me. I realized that for too long, I had put everyone else's dreams, needs, and happiness ahead of my own. Now, every step I took along that beach was a small reclaiming of myself. A heartbeat at a time, I was remembering who I was. Not just a mom, not just a grandma, but a woman with passions, desires, and a spark that had never really gone out. And as the sun climbed higher, warming my shoulders, I whispered, "I'm back. I'm really back." By Christmas morning, my phone had officially turned into a little storm. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Texts from Nathan, "Mom, we need you now." "Melissa, the kids are upset. Where are you?" Group messages, missed calls, even a frantic emoji-filled voicemail. I looked at my phone and just breathed. For the first time in forever, I didn't answer. Not because I was being cruel, not because I didn't care, but because I had finally realized I could set boundaries. Every ignored call felt like a little stitch of freedom sewing itself into my chest. Every unanswered text reminded me that I didn't owe anyone my exhaustion, my guilt, or my happiness. I sipped coffee on the balcony, watching the kids play in the sand nearby. Not mine, not my grandkids, just life moving along. And it hit me. I had spent decades saying yes to everything, and I had lost myself in the process. Now, saying no felt revolutionary, empowering, necessary. And even though my heart ached a little for my grandkids, I knew this was the first time I was prioritizing myself without shame. This Christmas morning wasn't about chaos or gifts or schedules. It was about me, and that simple truth sitting there with the ocean in front of me, felt sweeter than any present under the tree. That morning, I poured myself a cup of coffee and stepped out onto the balcony. The sun was just rising, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the gulls were calling overhead like an orchestra of freedom. No chaos, no rushing, no tiny hands tugging at my sleeves or screaming for attention. For the first time in decades, I could just breathe. I sipped my coffee slowly, letting the warmth seep into my chest. I watched the waves roll in, one after another, steady and soothing, and realized something. This is what Christmas should feel like. Not stress, not endless errands, not invisible labor that no one even notices. Just a quiet morning, a warm cup in my hands, and the simple joy of being alive. I smiled softly, thinking of all the years I had spent giving and giving and giving, never stopping to give to myself. But today was mine, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel selfish. I just felt peace. And that peace, that simple, beautiful, quiet peace, was worth more than any gift, any party, or any holiday tradition I had ever sacrificed myself for. For the first time in a long time, I was truly home in my own heart. Later that day, I sat back at my little desk with my notebook open. The pages were filled with words I'd written the night before, my confessions, my frustrations. My heart poured out in ink. I didn't get any apology texts. I didn't get calls saying, "We're sorry, Mom." And you know what? I didn't need them. What I did get was clarity, a clear, sharp understanding of what had been missing in my life all these years. I had spent decades giving love freely, tirelessly, endlessly, but I'd never given it to myself. I realized that love without self-respect is empty. You can give everything to everyone else and still feel hollow inside. As I read back over my words, I felt something shift. A little weight lifted from my shoulders. A little spark returned to my chest. This Christmas, I wasn't just resting on a beach. I was learning a lesson I had ignored for far too long. You can love your family, but you also have to love yourself. And in that moment, with the ocean humming softly in the background, I understood that the most important gift I could give myself was permission to matter, to exist, to finally put my own heart first. It was a lesson learned the hard way, but a lesson I would carry with me forever. The hardest part wasn't missing my kids or even the grandkids. It was missing the version of me who always said yes. The woman who put everyone else first, no matter how tired, how lonely, or how invisible she felt. That woman, she was gone. And honestly, I didn't mourn her for long. Instead, I felt something new, self-compassion. For the first time in decades, I allowed myself to be human, to have limits, to say, "No, I'm not doing that. Not today, not this Christmas." I realized that putting myself first wasn't selfish. It was survival. It was loving myself enough to finally draw a line. I thought about all the years I'd given everything and gotten little in return. All the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the unnoticed acts of love, and I understood that love wasn't wasted. It had shaped my family, but it didn't have to define my worth anymore. Sitting on the balcony, watching the waves, I whispered quietly, "I'm allowed to take up space. I'm allowed to say no. I'm allowed to matter." For the first time, guilt didn't rule me. For the first time, I felt strong. Because self-compassion isn't just a feeling, it's a choice. And I was finally choosing me. That evening, I walked down to the beach with nothing but my bare feet and a small bucket of sand. No kids, no schedules, no expectations, just me. I started building a tiny sandcastle, not for anyone, not for Instagram, not for approval, just for myself. And as I shaped the towers and dug the moats, tears started rolling down my cheeks. Not tears of sadness, tears of release. Release from decades of being invisible. Release from always saying yes while my own heart begged for attention. Release from the guilt I carried like a heavy coat I never took off. I laughed softly at how ridiculous it looked. Just one tiny sandcastle on a vast, empty beach. And then I smiled, really smiled. For the first time in decades, my soul felt light, free, alive. I realized that joy doesn't always come from family or gifts or traditions. Sometimes it comes from reclaiming yourself, from letting go of everything that doesn't serve you, from being small, silly, and completely selfish in the best way. That night, under the soft glow of the moon reflecting on the water, I whispered, This is happiness, pure and mine." And for the first time, I wasn't afraid to hold on to it. When I finally returned home after the holidays, everything looked the same. My house, my furniture, my old kitchen. But I was different. I walked in and felt a quiet strength I hadn't known I had. A sense that nothing could pull me back into the invisible role I'd been playing for decades. My children noticed it too. The way I carried myself, the calm in my voice, the fact that I wasn't rushing to cater to their every need. I could see it in their eyes, the first flicker of realization that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't theirs to command. And I didn't feel resentment, not really. I felt peace. I didn't rush to make everything perfect. I didn't apologize for taking time for myself. I just existed, fully, completely, freely. It was strange and freeing all at once. A house that had once been full of my constant giving now mirrored the change inside me. I had boundaries. I had strength. I had me. And as I sat down in my rocking chair that evening, I realized this Christmas hadn't been about the chaos, the presents, or even the kids. It had been about reclaiming myself, and nothing could ever take that away. That Christmas, I discovered something I hadn't felt in decades: myself. I realized that love without self-respect is empty. I had spent years giving everything to everyone, my children, my grandkids, even strangers, while forgetting the person who mattered most, me. Now I sit in my rocking chair and smile, not because anyone needs me, not because I'm being praised, not because the house is perfect, but because I need me. I've learned that it's okay to say no. It's okay to put myself first. It's okay to enjoy a quiet Christmas, a peaceful morning, or a tiny sandcastle built just for me. My heart feels full, but it's different now. It's not full of exhaustion, obligation, or invisible labor. It's full of respect for me, for the life I've earned. And when I look back on all those years of giving, I don't feel regret. I feel gratitude for the love I gave, for the lessons I learned, and for finally finding the courage to love myself the way I've always deserved. This Christmas, I finally understood the hardest lesson of all. You can love others endlessly, but if you don't love yourself first, you'll never truly be free. And now, every time I rock in this chair, I smile. Not because anyone is watching, but because I finally see me.